Hello, everyone. I'm Jérémy Pellet. I'm the CEO of Expertise France. It's a pleasure to host this session dedicated to exploring how women, in the context of crisis and conflict, can and need to become central actors of peace, resilience, and reconstruction. The Women, Peace and Security Agenda of the UN was adopted in 2000, actually the 31st of October, the adoption of the resolution 1325, so it's almost the anniversary. It's based on a strong conviction, which is that no lasting peace can be achieved without the full participation and leadership of women at all levels. So 25 years after, I think it's time to take stock in the Paris Peace Forum. It's probably fair to say that women's contribution remains under-recognized, probably underfunded, and insufficiently integrated into policies and strategic decisions, even if, against all odds, women are building peace every day. And we have three great panelists here whose remarkable journey illustrate this. So I suggest that we explore today, in the time we have, 4 issues. The first one is how to place women in the heart of policies, programs, and investments, to place women as decision makers. So let's put our gender lens, I would say. Second, let's make some contextual learning. We need to draw lessons from diverse experiences to strengthen the integration of the WPS agenda in every context. Third, I'd like to insist on inclusive economic empowerment. Promoting women's access to economic and financial resources in situation of crisis is a major driver of autonomy, of stability, and social cohesion. And last but not least, systemic coherence. Local action should be linked to national, to international policies, so as to make the WPS agenda a global and sustainable framework of action. So I'd just like to say that gender is not a swear word. Yes, we face significant headwinds. Yes, what is happening in some countries, like in the US, is troublesome, but we need to fight against the fact that gender tends to disappear from some agenda of institutions, even at the UN level. Sometimes that's a terrible mistake. It's a terrible mistake not only in terms of value, but also in terms of economic and social consequences for our world. So our discussion today is fully aligned with the vision of the group Agence Française de Développement. We have put at the heart of our action the security, peace, development, international cooperation continuum. And I am deeply convinced that peace is not a final state. It's a living process. We'll see that in the discussion. It's based on human security. It's based on social justice, on solidarity. And the international cooperation should reinforce that. And this process will be nothing without women and girls, of course. So within our group, both AFD, Proparco, and Expertise France, we have this common mission of supporting those who on the ground turn these principles into concrete actions, strengthening institutions, supporting all inclusive private sector, empowering civil societies in its capacity for action and innovation. And I'm therefore particularly pleased to welcome in this very hot room 3 qualified experts and partners of the AFD program. So let me introduce briefly our panelists. We have Hanadi Tutunji. She's the head of technical assistance at the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation. She has over 25 years of experience in inclusive finance, development, impact investment. She worked in several UN agencies, Capital Development Fund, UNHCR, at IFC, so she knows how financial inclusion can strengthen social cohesion and stability in fragile contexts. Next to her, we have Suzanne Aref. She's the director and founder of the Women Empowerment Organization in Iraq. She's a pioneer in implementing UN Resolution 1325. She presented it twice at the UN Security Council. She's also a leading figure in advocating for women's rights and inclusive governance, so she will help us understand how women's leadership can transform institutions and public policies. And last but not least, next to me, Nafissatou Idessadou, qui est, je vais parler en français, qui est la directrice exécutive
who is the executive director for the NGO Women Action and Development in Niger. You're a psychologist and you're a trainer. You've been mobilized for 15 years for greater participation of women in local decisions and in political involvement of women in conflict situations. You will explain to us how women can rebuild social connections and foster local governance in these situations.
In your own way, embody the spirit of cooperation, solidarity, and transformation that drives our shared mission. And we'll have the pleasure finally to hear from Peter Wagner, the director of the Service for Foreign Policy Investment at the European Commission. So without further ado, let us begin with you, Hanadi. Your organization has been working for several years to promote women access, including displaced women, to sustainable finance tools. So what concrete approaches have you implemented to adapt financial services to the lived reality of these women and to strengthen their economic agency in fragile contexts?
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, everybody, for having invited us to participate in this panel. To answer your question, actually, we at the foundation, at the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation, we focus so much on partnerships, and not partnerships that come from one region. We focus on holistic partnerships. So that goes from the field. So we consider the woman in the field who is like in the far, far end of the field a partner. And we consider the European Union, for example, a partner, and they're equal partners to us. So what we try to do concretely is consider this group of people. I'm a woman, actually, we're half the world. So we should not be considered as a subgroup or as a group that is fragile and, éloigné, as we say in French. We should be considered as a holistic client and not also as only a beneficiary. And many of the work we've seen in development focus on women as beneficiaries, which is necessary, but then we hit a glass ceiling where women are not considered as a real partner in business, in education, in raising the family, and everything. So what we try to do for us, we consider the woman as a full economic partner. And what we try to do in partnership with our funders, for example, a partnership with Proparco, who is part of the AFD group, we focus on women in most fragile contexts. So whether they are displaced, whether they work in agriculture, whether they are head of households. But we don't focus on the charity side, because that's not our job. We are impact investors. What we focus on is provide access to financial services and to non-financial services, which are education, training, business development, studies, research, data, access to data in their field of study, and also provide them with opportunities because, well, I am a woman who comes from a fragility context. Actually, I grew up in war all my life. I didn't know what normal life was until I was 22. So we need an opportunity, and this is what we try to do. And sometimes one opportunity is enough. So what we do for real is sometimes, for example, in some contexts, what we do is we create programs, we co-create programs with our partners. So we do not, for example, our partnership with Proparco is not like Proparco would come and tell us, we want this, and we say, okay, and we go and do it without looking at the field. We bring the field to the table, we bring Proparco to the table, and we try to do a holistic approach that can adapt to the needs, to the demand as well, and to the ambition of the women in the field. For example, now what we're trying to do in Uganda, for example, we have two main strategic partnerships with Proparco. The first one is in Uganda, where we focus on displacement. As a gender holistic approach, not only for women, because if you exclude the support system for women, which are men sometimes, which are institutions, you're doing half the job. So what we try to do is provide access to financial services to everybody. And we don't only focus on access, we focus on long-term usage of these services. That's why we partner with local organizations. And we don't go and do the project ourselves, and then we retreat, and then everything stops. So we focus on that. The second thing we do is we have a regional and sub-regional approach. For example, we have an innovation facility now with Proparco that focuses on fragile countries, so LDCs and countries in Africa, Middle East, Central Europe, and even Central Asia, that are in situations of fragility. And what we're focusing on is looking at the sector, the economic sectors that have the most opportunity to develop, but that are not, there are not enough investments there. For example, agriculture. For example, the digital sector, whereby you have a lot of fintechs developing, you have a lot of people who want to have access to digital services. But again, when it comes to women, we hit the ceiling, the glass ceiling, where we give them a little bit, and then there is no continuation. So we try to push the envelope to have more comprehensive services to women. And the third part is empowering women to do better. What we try to do is look exactly at the needs of women, what they can, they cannot do, what they can, they cannot afford. They have to be home, they have to be with the kids, they have to work as well. So they do a lot of things. They multitask all the time. We all actually as women multitask all the time. And what we try to do is adapt products to the needs of women so they can use them better, and they don't just use the product once and they cannot do it again. And we've done some studies actually and real life stories. For example, one time we had this partner financial service provider in a country in Africa who thought that women are not accessing their services because the interest rate was high. So we did a small study, just in the field, not a formal study, asking the women why. Actually, it was the meetings that they require and not the interest rate, because women cannot leave the kids at home and run to meetings every 2 weeks to do these meetings. So a simple adjustment sometime to products. Sometimes institutions do a small play area for kids so the women can bring the kids together. They will encourage women to use those services more and more. And talking about peace, it's actually a direct link, because women who raise their children with opportunities, with access to education, with access to healthcare, with stability in livelihoods, are less risky to expose those children to actions of terrorism, to actions of drug dealing, to actions of anything to raise money. And this is something proven. I mean, we're not going to talk about it now. Action even for little girls, sadly, of prostitution sometimes. So the more we can serve women as heads of households, and the more we can serve the households better and provide them with access to continuous and sustainable services, they will spend more on their kids, and they would reduce the risk of terrorism and other non-peaceful actions.
Thank you, Hanadi. I think you clearly shown that the financial services for women should not be only designed for them as beneficiaries, but with them, and then it clearly transforms their ability to act and to create value. Maybe on following up what you just say, I'd like you to explain how these initiatives can go beyond individual economic inclusion, which is, of course, very important, but also foster collective resilience and a stronger social cohesion within the communities in the situation of crisis.
Yes, thank you for that. Actually, what we try to do, we're like 4 years away from the SDGs 2030, and the SDGs have clear targets on women empowerment stuff. We feel that the SDG 17 has been ignored for a long time or misunderstood sometimes. So when we say partnership for the goals, what are the partnership? What we try to do within women empowerment, within gender equality, within everything we work with, is talk about those partnerships, is prove how can partnership move us further, instead of duplicating, instead of doing things just because we want to do something and retreat quickly. So we try to focus on that, and we try to focus on economic growth and not economic resilience of women, because resilience is there. You provide them with the first level of services, and they are remarkably resilient, women and men, actually. But then what happens next is the most important part. So what we try to do is partner with local institutions, not only financial service providers, it can also be with NGOs. We do not partner directly with them, so we leave the local institution to partner with each other because they know their market better. We don't impose on them how to do things. We don't impose on them how to design the product. We support them. We believe that they know their field, they know their country, they know their culture, they know better, and they know their business, sometimes better than we do actually know their business. So what we try to focus on is keep it at the local level and strengthen the local value chains within a country or within a region sometimes, or a sub-region. And this will bring more opportunities on the long term. And because we do investments, nobody invests if there is no return. And return is not a bad word at all, even if in development, because return means growth, it means sustainability, etc. So what we try to do is focus on that. And we try to do it, of course, within the development spectrum, within the work on the what we call the HDP nexus, so moving from humanitarian dependency to more development, to more sustainability. So that's the way we approach our work, through partnerships with partners in the north and in the south, and through partnering with local institutions. Recently, what we've been trying to do, we noticed that big banks in countries, in all countries actually, do not like to go this far, do not like the risk, they don't want to invest in these markets. So what we're trying to advocate for now at the foundation is get those banks to invest in local institutions. They don't have to go to the end client, just invest in these local institutions. So at least unlocking local investments as well, in addition to international investments.
Thanks a lot for this very concrete insight. I think economic autonomy is clearly a factor of stability and social cohesion when it's taking into account this inclusive and sustainable approach. So this leads us to our second level of our discussion, women's political and social leadership. So Suzanne, as you've been coordinating the implementation of the first national action plan for women, peace and security in the Middle East. What levers can we use to strengthen women's real participation and political influence in peace, security, and development process?
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this great opportunity. I'm really honored to take part of this important discussion and the anniversary, the 25 years anniversary of 1325. Of course, moving the women peace security agenda from words, from documents to action. It needs really to recognize women not just like victims and beneficiaries, but as a partner and decision makers. Till now, we are thinking that, not of course we, when I'm saying, but mostly, like this women peace security agenda, it's women issue, it's not security issue, but this is wrong. So the important thing, how we can change this, how we can change this document to reality, to be reflected on the ground. Of course, the first thing, we need a political will. Political will, not only a statement or a nice speech, but a political will that comes with a clear structure and concrete plan, resources, human resource, finance, techniques. So this is what we need to be able. And of course, this is like we need that investing in women leadership. This is not for the favor of women. This is right. And this is the smart investment in peace. Economic empowerment. It's not separated from security. It is the practice of peace. So if we talking about strengthening women participation, of course, this is the core of 1325 women's participation. So the first thing we have to think about it is the local engagement. It is the foundation of any national changes. If we ask, before 25 years, how the Security Council adopted this resolution, it came because there was a huge campaign from local organizations around the world talking about the conflict and its impact on women and girls. So this is how it is really important to think about the local engagement. Local engagement, it's the foundation. It is very essential. So you just mentioned about my coordination with the first National Action Plan. Yes, we were 10 women organizations when we started the initiative, because we wanted this document, this tool, to be translated on the ground, because this is the need of women. Women need a response, and what they need all being mentioned in this resolution. So this is how we start to, and our aim at that time, it was only to bridge between grassroots activists and government, ministerial, like state actors. And we were able to secure the ownership and the political will of government by establishing the Iraqi cross-sector task force that responsible for developing the first National Action Plan and the implementation plan, the monitoring plan, which was the first National Action Plan in the MENA region and the first report in MENA region. And you can see how local community, local organization doing a great job by how reflecting this is international block frame on the national ground. So this is what we need, how to translate it and how women to benefit from it. So through this weapon, we mobilized women across Iraq. We consulted with them to shape the priorities. What is the need? Because there is different needs from south to center to north. So this is how we were able to bring all this to be reflected even in the second National Action Plan. So this is how we guaranteed through this National Action Plan, first, institutionalization of women peace security agenda through the cross-sector task force, which was responsible for developing, implementing, and reporting. And the unique thing that this cross-sector task force gathered two governments, the federal Iraqi government and Kurdistan government, the two parliament, federal and Kurdistan parliament, and the civil society. It is very unique when you see the partnership, civil society participating, and it was very participatory process. So this is how civil society, local organization, they are the actors on the ground. They are risking their life. They are frontline, responding to the need. They amplifying their voice. I am here to talk about women's need and how women suffering every day. Through this, through this process, we were able to localize the National Action Plan because we did all the consultation. We meet with displaced women, women inside camp, women leaders inside the community to understand the needs. And also with the collective pressure, we were able to reflect this in the second National Action Plan and also to push the endorsement of the survival law for Yazidi and other minorities who were victims of ISIS. So, and the third, it's accountability, how we were able to monitor through this cross-sector task force to monitor the process all for the Women, Peace, Security agenda. So this is how important the role of women rights organization on the ground. They are doing the changes in the country, but of course, nothing is sustainable, and there is every time changes. So this is, of course, now one thing I go with my colleague Hanadi, she mentioned, the local organization, they know the context. And this is important when they are part of this, when they are doing the advocacy, they know what is the priority, what is the need, and what is the response. So this is why it is important, the engagement of local community in all the process from the beginning. And I have to say also how they were able to insist on economic and social empowerment in the National Action Plan, because if we want to build a peace, we cannot do it without economic empowerment, without independency for women. Because this is when women getting this opportunity of to have a job, resource. So this is how changing the life and to be more confident and stable and reflecting this in her family and community.
Thank you, Susan. I think your description shows how much the institutional recognition of this women in peace processes remains a daily struggle. Maybe from your experience, how do you convince political leaders? Sometimes they are men, that the women, peace and security agenda should become a central pillar of public policy, rather than an additional or a symbolic element.
Yeah, as I mentioned, women, peace, security, it is not about women issue, it's about security, peace and security issue. So if we are looking for stabilization, and peace and security, of course, we have to pay more attention to the implementation of the Women, Peace, Security agenda. And it is not only Women, Peace, Security. We can see the division. There's also Youth, Peace, Security. So the division, they creating the division group working on this, another group working on youth and peace, security. So we need all to come together to work on the same agenda. And this is when we are saying women, it's including women, youth, men, it is for the state. You know that the problem when we are paying more attention to war and budgeting for that. But when it comes to peace, we can see very little budget allocated for peace building. So this is a question mark. Does only the war need budget and the peace doesn't need a budget? doesn't need like resources. So this is why, if we are looking to look about peace building and stabilization, it is not only in our country, because the stabilization in our country, it will affect on all the region and all the world. But we can see this with like a global change, reducing fund, and first it comes on women issue and with the shrinking space. So it's not serving this agenda. So of course we can convince, how we were able to convince like the state actors and how to gain their ownership on developing the first national action plan. I'm sure women rights organizations, they are able to do this.
Thank you, Susan, and I'm welcoming Peter, who is jumping from one session to the other. We were just discussing about social inclusion of women in situation of peace, and now political inclusion with the example of Iraq. Maintenant, je me permets de
I will now switch to French and turn to Nafissatou Idei Sadou. When there's a crisis, when there's conflict, and that's when your organization intervenes, women play a key role in maintaining a cohesive society. How can we support them in doing that? How can we help them maintain a form of local governance despite the difficulties? Thank you for that question. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving women a voice. Today I will be speaking on behalf of women from Niger, from the Sahel, and they experience insecurity every single day. I also want to be the voice of all women's organizations who aspire to see women mobilized and more and with more participation in governing bodies. In the Sahel, crises are not only security crises. There's also a problem of poverty, exclusion, and a lack of trust between communities. Women are rendered invisible by all of these factors. And yet they maintain a cohesive society, they maintain social bonds. And I think that's possible because they no longer see themselves as victims. They see themselves as actors, and they help each other out. In rural environments, you have more and more groups of women coming together, organizing themselves. NGOs are created by women, for women. You have to bear in mind that when there's extreme poverty or insecurity, women flee. Men flee. They leave because they go to war. There are no more institutions. And so who remains? Women. They are the ones who hold villages together, even refugee camps. They support displaced persons and communities who are vulnerable. So they're at the very heart of local solidarity. When there's no hope, when there are very feeble institutions, women are still there trying to give hope to their children. So I think they have a role to play at every level, local level, national levels, and even at a political level. We are seeing an increasing political awakening. More and more women are now part of decision groups. In Niger, we have a law, a quota law, and it's not always applied, that's true, but it ensures that women participate in many governing bodies, including the government. And they speak with one voice. They defend women's rights. They are really building a movement that supports their sisters. There's more and more mentoring that's put in place, locally, regionally. Safe spaces are put in place where women leaders support girls or survivors of gender violence. So I think that's how women maintain social bonds. Thank you, Nafisatou. So maybe you can tell us about your work, your experience with your NGO. What are concrete actions, economic actions, long-term actions that can reinforce the fact that women will take their futures into their own hands, will ensure that they are part of local government?
Our experiences both within the NGO and with certain consortiums we're involved in allow us to have an impact on multiple levels. First of all, in fostering female leadership, we try to support women with as many training programs as we can, whether it's in the countryside or in urban areas, so that they can develop leadership skills, self-confidence, so that they can understand their roles as women in a fragilized context, a context in which men have abandoned their responsibilities and they bear a heavy burden. Beyond their responsibility to their families, they are responsible for entire communities, societies that depend on them. We also reinforce them on the way in which they communicate, the way in which they communicate within society, to be able to carry a single narrative to defend the rights of women and young girls. There's also the economic empowerment of women at every level. We try to identify female leaders, we organize them in female groups, and we give them the necessary tools to develop activities which will generate revenue. And at a certain level, we need to be able to scale up and allow women that are engaged in economic activity, we need to allow them to become SMEs so that they can have access to certain types of funding and become autonomous. There's also work we do within collective frameworks. Women in Niger and Sahel create communities to foster the Women for Peace and Safety agenda. We do it in a much more structured approach, and our voice is heard at the government level today because we've proved our effectiveness in supporting women, in involving women in mechanisms to prevent and manage conflicts. There are often infrastructures at the local level where we see the absence of women. There's only men that are chairing these organizations, and we need to revitalize these infrastructures so that women can play their real role. We also support feminine organizations. We play a third-party role for these organizations. We support these organizations. We've just created a laboratory that supports feminine organizations. We do an organizational diagnostic to determine the level of this organization, and depending on results, we usually do a capability build-up plan. Real change today is seen in the fact that there are more and more feminine organizations today that are involved in the agenda for the involvement of women in peace and security. And we are in contact with funding organizations. Every organization had the ability to present their organization, their activity before dozens of funding organizations. We also work on the way in which the public sector can support these organizations, what reforms can be implemented politically, and how the action plan that is currently being designed in Nigeria, see how women can be involved in that. Many women are not aware of the 1325 resolution. That's something we managed to overcome so that everyone understands what we're doing. We are also implementing projects with consortiums. AFD has supported us.
D'un consortium avec Equipop, FAD, Gorée, Diaconia.
A project with multiple organizations that is now being implemented in several countries in Sahel, Benin, Burkina Faso, Togo, for instance, and these touch upon feminist issues. So through this project, we can see results. We have over 500 feminine organizations that are being supported today that have access to funding opportunities, the scope of which range from 15,000 to 16,000 euros. For some of these organizations, it's the first time they have these opportunities, and we try to involve them more in the role they need to play to better understand what their responsibility is in continuing this fight. Thank you very much, Nafissatou. Thank you for highlighting the very important role of local organizations to structure
maybe one
these networks.
To each of you, as we are within the Paris Peace Forum with this global view, and we have the European Union with us. Just one idea to make this women, peace and security agenda become a really truly global investment framework. What should we do? Hanadi.
One idea, I would say, I would plea actually for all international actors, including governments, including international organizations, to think out of the box. We still have the big challenge. We ask countries to think outside of the box. We ask the beneficiaries, the women, to think outside of the box when it comes to funding, investing in peace and security. These are the processes, these are the procedures. We cannot even add something or change something. I think we all owe it to everybody who lives under conflict or under a crisis to try to be more flexible in our thinking. That would be
thinking outside of the box and flexibility.
Yeah.
Susan, what should be your suggestion?
My suggestion is how to move from to use this as a symbolic resolution to accountability, how to strengthen the accountability on the implementation of this resolution and the follow resolution. We have to link between international cooperation, funding, and not this women, peace, security stays on project. To be beyond project, to become a policy, a system, this women, peace, security agenda, because this is how we were we will be able to achieve peace, security. Otherwise, it will be only like nice document, and we have to celebrate every year and do anniversary. And also, to not forget to support women rights organization. They are the real actors and player on the ground. They have the context. They are brave. They are risking their life to raise their voice and to talk about women, how they are suffering and what do they need. And how to move from consultation to power. It is not only using women rights organization to consult with them, but also they have to be part in decision making. They have to be part in all the process, in the implementation of this women peace security agenda. So I want to say, even with that, we cannot do this all by ourselves. Of course, without your support, we will not be able to do this, but of course we have to continue, because women peace security, it is not temporary things. It should be on continuous base. Conflict, it is on continuous base. And the one mistake that we don't want to repeat it, this has happened to us in Iraq. When ISIS interfered in Iraq, they cut all the budget of development. They shifted all the budget to humanitarian and emergency. And this has affected a lot to the other provinces, on the development program. So we have not to ignore, even if we are locating budget for a humanitarian or any emergency, but we have not to forget the development, because this is how we are losing what we achieved before, and this is what happened. So it's important, and of course, how to solve and respond to the shrinking space of civil society, because otherwise, again, we are going to a dictatorship if there will be a real civil society. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Et Nafissatou, pour finir, votre recommandation.
And Nafissatou, what is your recommendation to conclude? Thank you very much. We need to begin to insert the agenda for women, peace and security in policy at every level. We also need to facilitate these organizations so that they are well organized, well structured, so that they can last, so that they can function sustainably, because often projects exist on a scope of 1 to 2 years, which don't allow feminine organizations to be very well established. And if they don't exist sustainably, we have to look for solutions. We also have to work on localizations. We have to stop at a certain point. How should I put this? We have to overcome transitions and use international organizations to fund feminine organizations. Today, we know very well what the context is. And if the context is becoming more and more ambiguous, we need to be able to properly organize the future on a local level. We need to make sure that there is a strong local anchoring. We also have to be able to prioritize needs on a local level, to standardize our approach in every action plan that you will maybe support. We have to have an African posture to foster the agenda in Sahel and for all other countries that are involved, to create a common communication and a common communication framework and a common narrative, so that we understand that the only narrative that is there is how to better involve women in decision-making narratives and conflict prevention. Thank you very much.
Our three speakers for the strength, for the richness of your testimonies. I felt, I would say, a slight criticism of the action of donors and partners. If I can maybe wrap up your main message is we still tend to see women as beneficiaries and not actors of the process. So we certainly need to move from women being an object to women being the subject of the peace situation. So that's a well taken point. We've tried at the level of FD Group to incorporate women in our action in our Peace and Resilience Fund, MINCA for FD. You mentioned the challenge developed by Proparco, 2X Challenge initiative to have projects by women raising and being, and then at the level of being financed. We've tried to build with the French government the support fund from feminist organizations, which is also here to support the civil society organizations, which are absolutely key in this process. And at Expertise France level, we try to always use this gender lens on our programs, like in Syria on health, in education on IT, or of course in Latin America on social cohesion. But we need to certainly do better and keep this linkage between the local activities and actions and those international public policies. So I'm delighted in this framework to welcome Peter Wagner, the Director of the Service of Foreign Policy Instrument, FPI, as we know it, within the European Commission, to share his experience, a long-term experience on international and particularly European framework, and how we can amplify these local dynamics towards an inclusive and social peace with women at the center.
Merci beaucoup, Jeremy. Thank you very much, and apologies for being late, but indeed I was stuck in another panel. It's an honor, pleasure being here with you. It is at the moment, I understand, the season and good reasons for the anniversary of having a number of events on women, peace and security. And I must say, I come back to the criticism, but I'm positively surprised, because I must say here I have much less than in some of the events where I have been over the last 3-4 weeks, this impression that women are too often presented or discussed as objects and victims, that we see much more here, I'm not saying every year, but seeing much more here really women as powerful agents of change, of policy and of action. And without praising ourselves too much, we are pretty proud that we have been able for this year again, 2 or 3 years, to have all or nearly all female panels, and that not as an explicit objective of it, but just by having, notably in some countries, mainly women who at the end of the day, if you talk about certain topics, are involved. And therefore I think we are really happy there that we can contribute a little bit. But I definitely don't want to say we are there yet. We clearly are not, and there's still a lot to be done. I think you know, and of course one could now read out that we have our formal council conclusions from 2018 and 2022. We have a gender action plan. We have targets on women in all kind of civil, common security, foreign policy documents, etc. But indeed, as you rightly say, the proof is in the pudding, is what is really happening on the ground. Where do we stand? And we still see, sometimes even where objectively at the highest level certain quota and figures and benchmarks are met, that at lower levels and elsewhere it doesn't seem to work out. Now, let me say a few words. I am happy that I could listen also at least to some of the contributions. If I come very briefly, but then I stop the defensive part, on the question of what we should try and do. Yes, we are aware of it. I am in this business for, as you rightly said, a number of years, also in internal policies. We hear the same thing all the time. But our problem is that we have tried and we continue trying to overcome some of the limitations which our co-legislators are giving us. We live in a regulatory framework which is given to us by European Parliament, European member states. We call it the financial regulation, and too often there is indeed this wish to be able to control from somewhere in Brussels down to somewhere, wherever in a province across the globe, where the money is eventually going. And that is where I agree we have to continue looking for better solutions. We are trying to do that in FPI, but also other parts of the European Commission increasingly. On the one hand, by trying to do co-creation, so that at least you're involved from the beginning in defining what we do, and then maybe taking into account already what are our limitations. Secondly, we are increasingly trying to do it by having more aggregated projects and meeting projects and programs to avoid the fragmentation, because we all have limited funds. I'm just back from 2 depressive days talking with the few who ever had significant funds. There is only Denmark from that group of 8 or 10, including countries like the US and Norway, but Denmark, which says they have stable funding. We still have stable funding in the EU, but we know that as of 2028, whatever we are proposing at the moment, also our budgets will go down. So for us, indeed, it's even more important, together with you, to really identify the pertinent issues. We have to also try and find more than the projects where we reach a critical mass, because it doesn't help if we do, I don't know the English word, saupoudrage, where you just spread the money across the globe, across any topic, etc. Sometimes if you want to change, you need a critical mass, and that has to happen. But I think today the ideas that you have presented show us that women have ideas, have transformative power on leadership, economic, peace building, you name it. And if you allow me to go to some of the points made in my notes here, is that Hanadi Tutunji, you underscored indeed that too often this financial inclusion is still forgotten. And having started my career of discussing these points in the Commission, I came late to the Commission, but 25 years ago within the EU, on questions of access to financial inclusion of women, etc. It's on the one hand good to see that there's progress, but on the other hand, it's a bit frustrating indeed that the progress also in this area is a bit of a slow animal. But I think it's something where we are trying to work on it. We work on it notably in this kind of the nexus with humanitarian development and peace actors, because it's here also where you have to start early on that this role is prepared and developed. Thank you very much also, Susan Aref, for your statement, which was very clear on women in public policies and not being only victims, etc., which I think is very important for us. But also, indeed, the challenge, how, and that has also partly to do maybe with the size of it, how to move from the grassroots activities, where women are always very strong, to really influencing institutions, moving into the institutions, and from the city councils to the national parliaments, and or into the city councils and then to the national parliaments and onwards. Because I think there's still elements lacking. You gave us some very pertinent examples. We think it is an area that is important, and you might have heard we are preparing in our work program a new Women, Peace and Security program for about 12 million euro, and this topic should normally figure there quite prominently, because it is for us this scaling up and moving up and staying out of the nice anecdotal boutique grassroots level, which is nice for storytelling, but I think when it comes to impact, which is limiting. For us, I think that is important, but it's also important, and we try to work there already with existing projects, that different groups of women from grassroots and other levels are coming together, are there to exchange among themselves best practices, to talk about what is possible, what more could be done. And then again, thank you very much also Nafissatou Idessatou for vos remarques concernant la résilience locale.
For your remarks on local resilience. And you're right, it's at the heart of everything that's been going on. When I said we had to go beyond grassroots, I didn't mean that we had to forget about grassroots, because it's a very important element locally. But we want to go beyond that, we want to develop that and go even further. And I think that you've given us very clear examples of what can be done, of what already exists.
To wrap up more generally from my perspective, 50 seconds. Yes, we know that we are, as international organizations, international funding partners, governments, or something in between, like the European Commission, under the obligation to, on the one hand, use the money for our taxpayers in the most efficient, transparent, etc. way. But I am also convinced that by working with you, this is much easier than doing it in an abstract manner. So that's why I really think this continuous exchange between you and us is so important, because we will, notably then us in Brussels, very far away, we usually work through intermediaries, international organizations, national organizations, etc. None of us ever gives any money directly to the grassroots level. That's just not possible. But there I think we have to continue finding ways of improving that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and that's great to hear that WPS is still strongly supported by the EU, and that's very positive. So just to thank our panelists, our speakers. We've seen from your example how women can be agents of change, and through you, all the women working in the field every day. So let's keep this message, and let's continue to work to make this vision a reality in the implementation of this ambitious goal. Thank you very much, and have a good forum. Thank you.